In order to give people the support that they deserve and learn some leadership skills, I read this book called The Coaching Habit. In the past, in my early 20s, I would spend time with people, and sometimes they might have had some problems, and I would very quickly jump into giving them advice about those problems, and just as quickly get annoyed at the fact that they're not really taking any of my advice. And what this book has taught me is advice isn't always the thing that people want to hear, because it's not necessarily tailored very much to them. And the one key takeaway that I've learned from this book is that people actually are better at figuring out the advice themselves, and they will follow that advice much more if they figure this out themselves rather than be told the advice by somebody else. And so this book teaches a series of 7 questions that guide the other person towards the correct answer. So the first thing that you want to ask them is, what's on your mind? It opens them up. The second question is, and what else? The AWE, the or question. And what else? Then they tell you a thing. And then you ask again, and what else? And then they tell you a thing. And then you ask again, and what else? And you want to keep asking that until they say there is nothing else, because that stops you from giving advice. Because you want to get down to the root of the problem and find out the most important part of this problem. And the question that narrows it down even more and figures out that problem is, what's the most important thing here for you? So then they have time to reflect. And those first 3 questions are game changers. I started using those as soon as I've read that part of the book, and they've been hugely important and very useful to use in everyday life. But then once you know the problem, you want to guide the person towards solving the problem. So then you ask, what do you need? And they might give you a need. A lot of people might not even know what they need, but it gives them a chance to reflect. Then you ask them, what can I do for you? That kind of gets them to help you, potentially. They might not need any help from you. The next question is, if you are saying yes to this, what are you saying no to? If you are saying yes to this, what are you saying no to? Time is a limited resource, and you want to point to that, because sometimes whenever you choose a path to do something, you have to say no to doing something else. Finally, the last question assumes the importance of learning, and it assumes that there is learning ingrained in this, and the question is, what have you learned here today? Actually, no, it's not. And the question is, what is the most useful thing here for you? And it assumes the usefulness of that conversation. And when you actually sit down and reflect on the learnings, you solidify those learnings even more. And that kind of summarizes everything that you might have talked about. So there we go. Those are the 7 questions. I recommend reading that book because there's so much more in depth about this topic inside of the book that it's worth reading and rereading over and over. It's one of the most important it's one of the most important books that I've read in the past 12 months at least.